December 18th, 1944, just after dawn, somewhere near Ligneuville in the Ardennes forest. The engine coughs, then settles into a ragged idle. Exhaust hangs low, a gray breath trapped beneath the trees. Snow crunches under boots, too loud, the officer thinks. Everything is too loud in the cold, even silence. Hauptmann Karl Weiss grips the edge of the captured American truck and leans in. The smell hits him first. Sharp, sweet, gasoline. Real gasoline. Not the watered-down substitute they've been nursing for weeks. Not the last dregs siphoned from abandoned cars. This is the kind that burns clean. The kind that moves steel. Around him, German grenadiers move fast, hands numb, faces blackened with soot and exhaustion. Someone laughs, actually laughs, when the tarp is pulled back and the jerry cans come into view. Dozens of them, American green, stenciled white letters, U.S. Army fuel. Weiss doesn't laugh. He just exhales, slow, careful, as if the moment might shatter if he moves too quickly. They've been driving on fumes since yesterday. The offensive, Wacht am Rhein, was supposed to be a thunderclap, a sudden blow through the Ardennes, across the Meuse, splitting the Allied armies in half. Speed was everything, surprise, momentum, and fuel, especially fuel. Now, here it is. An American convoy, lost or late or simply unlucky, frozen in place by panic or confusion. Trucks idling when they should have been moving. Drivers gone, captured or fled into the trees. No guards, no demolitions, just gasoline waiting for whoever arrived first. Weiss watches as hoses are jammed into tank ports. Fuel sloshes. Men shout numbers, curses, prayers. A Panzer IV pulls forward, its crew jumping down like starving men at a table. The tank commander kisses the cold steel of the hull before climbing back inside. For a moment, just a moment, it feels like the war has turned. You can almost feel it, that sharp electric lift in the chest, the kind soldiers live for, the sense that fate has blinked, that the impossible has cracked open just enough to slip through. Weiss pulls off his gloves and lights a cigarette with shaking fingers. The flame gutters in the wind. He cups it close, breathing in smoke and gasoline and pine resin. Somewhere deeper in the forest, artillery rumbles like distant thunder. The front is moving west. They are moving west. This was not how it was supposed to feel, he thinks. It was supposed to be brutal, desperate, a final throw of the dice. Instead, it feels like a gift. Just days ago, they were stalled outside Lussheim, engines dead, radios barking for fuel that never came, orders contradicted by reality, maps useless without gasoline to cross them. One battalion commander had shot his horse and burned the saddle for warmth. And now, this. Weiss steps down from the truck and looks at his watch. Time matters again. That alone feels like a victory. With fuel, you can choose. With fuel, you can advance, bypass resistance, exploit gaps. With fuel, you can pretend the war is still something you control. Load everything, he snaps. We take what we can, burn the rest. The word burn lands heavy, but no one questions it. They've learned. What they can't carry, they deny to the enemy. Black smoke soon coils upward as punctured cans are ignited, the fire crackling bright against the snow. Wasteful, necessary. As the last tanks are topped off, Weiss climbs back into his command vehicle. The engine revs eagerly, almost impatient. He feels it through the seat, through his boots. The machine wants to move. So does he. They roll out within minutes, engines growling, tracks biting into frozen mud. The road ahead curves west, deeper into the Ardennes, past villages with unreadable signs, past civilians who stare without waving, past wrecks still smoldering from the night before. Somewhere behind them, the smoke from the burning fuel dump marks the spot like a black finger pointing at the sky. The miracle, Weiss thinks. This is what a miracle looks like. The Americans had been caught asleep, their lines thin, their roads jammed. They'd underestimated the weather, the forest, the sheer audacity of the attack. For 48 hours, everything had gone right. Bridges captured intact, units bypassed, prisoners taken faster than they could be marched back, and fuel captured, stolen, begged from fate itself. Weiss allows himself to imagine it, reaching the Meuse, crossing it, forcing the Allies to pull back, negotiations, a pause, maybe even an end that doesn't look like annihilation. Ahead, the lead tank signals a halt, a brief stop. The radio crackles with updates. American resistance stiffening to the north, road congestion ahead, requests for fuel from another Kampfgruppe already running low again. Already. Weiss stares forward, the cigarette burning down between his fingers. He flicks ash out the open hatch and watches it vanish into the snow. Fuel comes, fuel goes. He knows this. Everyone knows this. They talk about it in whispers, in half-jokes. The Reich runs on miracles now, on captured dumps, on enemy mistakes, on the hope that tomorrow will provide what today consumed. But hope is not logistics. The engines idle again, drinking, always drinking. Weiss glances back down the road they came from. For a split second, he imagines it stretching all the way east, to depots, refineries, rail lines humming with supply. A road that feeds instead of drains. The vision fades quickly. Orders come through. Move, now, before the Americans reorganize, before the weather clears, before the window closes. The column surges forward once more, chasing momentum, chasing distance, chasing the fragile illusion that this time will be different. Behind the noise and the motion, a quieter thought settles in Weiss's mind, unwelcome and persistent. What happens when the fuel runs out again? He pushes it aside. Not now, not today. The miracle is still burning. But even as the engines roar and the column disappears into the trees, the truth waits patiently ahead, silent, cold, and unmoved by luck. The road narrows as the forest thickens, the trees pressing close like silent witnesses. Snow clings to branches overhead, shaking loose in soft avalanches as the armored column pushes west. Engines roar louder now. Healthier, almost eager, fed by American gasoline still warm in the tanks. Hauptmann Karl Weiss keeps his head out of the hatch despite the cold. He wants to see everything. The road surface, the ditches, the civilians standing back from the trees, wrapped in coats that are too thin, faces unreadable. Every kilometer gained feels stolen, borrowed from time itself. They pass burned-out Shermans half buried in snowdrifts, U.S. infantry helmets scattered along the verge, signs of a retreat done in haste. Somewhere ahead, the Americans are pulling themselves together, but not yet, not fast enough. For now, speed belongs to the Germans. The radio chatters constantly, Kampfgruppen leapfrogging each other, reports of bridges taken intact, of roadblocks brushed aside, of American units surrendering after brief, confused firefights. No one talks about casualties unless asked. There's no time for that. Weiss studies his map, tracing the thin black line of the road westward with a gloved finger. Each town name sounds heavier than the last. Stavelot, Tropont. Names that mean fuel depots, crossroads, opportunity. Fuel again. That is the unspoken rhythm of the advance. Not objectives, not enemy strength, fuel. Every decision bends around it. Units bypass resistance not because it's strong, but because stopping costs gasoline. Tanks avoid unnecessary detours. Trucks are abandoned the moment their engines falter, stripped of anything burnable. A Panther ahead of Weiss begins to slow, its exhaust note changing pitch. The tank commander signals frantically. A problem, but not yet fatal. They pull over just long enough to siphon fuel from a half-track behind it. No ceremony, just hoses, shouts, and the smell of raw gasoline soaking into gloves. You can almost feel the tension in those moments. Engines idling, eyes scanning the tree line. Every minute stopped feels dangerous. Every minute stopped drinks fuel. Then the tank surges back to life,
and the column moves again, leaving dark stains in the snow where fuel has spilled, temporary scars marking their passage. By midday, the weather begins to shift. The low cloud ceiling lifts slightly, and Weiss notices it immediately. Too immediately. Clearer skies mean Allied aircraft. Everyone knows it. They've been praying for bad weather, clinging to the snow and fog like allies of their own. The Luftwaffe cannot protect them, not anymore. A distant engine whine cuts through the forest silence, high, fast, American. The column halts instinctively, vehicles scattering under trees, camouflage nets thrown up in practiced desperation. Men freeze, listening. The aircraft passes without attacking. A collective breath releases. Nervous laughter follows. But the warning lingers. As they push on, resistance stiffens, not everywhere, but enough. A crossroads defended by American paratroopers who refuse to break. A bridge blown just minutes before they arrive, dropping steel and concrete into an icy river below. Each delay costs time. Each delay costs fuel. Weiss listens to reports from neighboring units. Some have reached fuel dumps and struck gold. Others are already stalled, engines silent, crews digging foxholes beside dead machines. The contrast is brutal. Advance or die in place. By late afternoon, the column reaches a small village, stone houses, narrow streets, a church steeple rising above the rooftops. No shots greet them, just civilians peering from doorways. White flags hang from windows. A reconnaissance team rushes back with news. Fuel trucks, American, parked behind the church. Again. For a moment, Weiss almost laughs. They move quickly this time, as if the trucks might vanish if approached too slowly. The scene repeats itself. Hoses, shouting, the frantic arithmetic of liters and kilometers. Men work with a kind of manic focus, aware now that this luck cannot be assumed. Weiss watches the fuel gauge climb and feels the same surge of relief and something else beneath it. Unease. Because this time, the numbers don't look as good. The trucks aren't full. Some have already been drained. Others contain different fuel grades, forcing crews to argue over mixtures that might or might not keep engines running. One tank crew argues fiercely, voices sharp with exhaustion, until Weiss steps in and assigns fuel by rank and necessity. Someone will be short. Someone always is. As dusk settles, the fires begin again. Fuel they can't take is burned, sending pillars of black smoke into the darkening sky. It feels different now, less triumphant, more desperate. Weiss stands apart from the noise and chaos, staring westward where the road disappears into shadow. The Meuse is still far, too far. He thinks of the American supply lines, vast, elastic, fed by ports and railheads stretching back across an ocean. He's seen them before. Broken, yes, but always repaired. Bent, but never truly snapped. And then he looks at his own column. Tanks running on captured fuel, trucks filled with stolen gasoline, an army advancing on chance and momentum, praying that tomorrow's road will offer what today consumes. The engines idle again, drinking. Weiss checks his watch and closes the map. Orders are coming down to push through the night. No rest, no consolidation. The fuel they have must be turned into distance, now, before it evaporates into nothing. As the column prepares to move, a message crackles over the radio from another unit, farther ahead. They've run dry, completely. Silence follows the transmission. No one responds at first. Weiss lowers his headset slowly. The miracle is still alive, for him, for now, but it's thinning, stretching, becoming fragile. He climbs back into his vehicle as the engine revs once more, its growls strong, but not infinite. Somewhere ahead, the road will end. The only question is whether the fuel will end first.
Night closes in without ceremony. No sunset, no warning. Just the slow swallowing of color until the world becomes gray, then black. Headlights stay dark. Engines rumble low. The column moves by memory, by instinct, by the pale strip of snow reflecting what little light the sky still gives. Inside his command vehicle, Hauptmann Karl Weiss feels the cold creep upward from the floor. It seeps through boots, through bones. Fatigue settles in behind the eyes, dull but persistent. No one has slept properly in days. Sleep costs time. Time costs fuel. The road ahead begins to clog. It starts with a single disabled truck, nose down in a ditch. Its driver crouched beside it with a rifle and a look of quiet defeat. Then another. Then a tank stopped at an awkward angle. Crewmen clustered around the engine deck, hands black with oil, faces hollow in the dark. Traffic compresses, engines idle longer than they should. Drink. 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 Weiss leans out of the hatch, scanning forward. A flare pops somewhere ahead, white, sudden, blinding. American. The column freezes. Men flatten themselves against steel. For a few seconds, everything is still, except the ticking of cooling engines. No attack comes. But the message is clear. The enemy is awake now. Radio traffic grows sharper, more urgent. Requests stack on top of each other. Fuel reports, route clarifications, warnings of blown bridges and unexpected resistance. The advance is no longer a smooth push. It's a series of negotiations with reality. A messenger arrives from the rear, breath fogging in quick bursts. He reports that supply vehicles are falling behind. Some have been abandoned entirely. Others are being cannibalized to keep the lead elements moving. Weiss nods, though the news tightens something in his chest. This is how it begins, he thinks. Not with collapse, with friction. Every kilometer west stretches their lifeline thinner. Captured fuel dumps grow rarer, American mistakes fewer. The road itself seems to resist them now, narrowing, twisting, forcing detours that maps don't show and engines resent. They pass through another village just before midnight. This one isn't quiet. Sporadic rifle fire cracks from the outskirts. A machine gun opens up briefly, then stops. The Germans reply with a few bursts, enough to silence resistance, but not enough to justify the fuel a prolonged fight would cost. Weiss orders them through without stopping. In the village square, he catches a glimpse of something that unsettles him more than the gunfire. American trucks, burned. Not captured, destroyed deliberately. Tires slashed, engines smashed. Fuel spilled and ignited until only twisted frames remain. The Americans are learning. The realization lands hard. The enemy is no longer leaving gifts behind. They are denying them. Every destroyed truck is a calculation. Every burned dump, a decision made in time. Somewhere behind the American lines, an officer has made the same choice Weiss did earlier, only in reverse. Burn it. Leave nothing. The column pushes on, but the mood has changed. The laughter is gone. Conversations die quickly. Men focus inward, conserving energy the way machines conserve fuel. Carefully, deliberately, knowing there will be no refill for exhaustion. Near dawn, the road climbs into higher ground. Snow deepens. Vehicles strain. Engines whine louder, higher, as if protesting the effort. Weiss watches the fuel gauge drop, needle sliding with a steadiness that feels personal, almost accusatory. The radio crackles again. Another unit ahead is immobilized. Not destroyed, just empty. Their tanks sit silent along the roadside. Crews huddled beside them with rifles and shovels, suddenly infantry again. Orders are unclear. Do they wait? Do they fall back? Do they hold ground they cannot move from? Weiss knows the answer, even if no one says it. They will wait and hope. Hope for fuel that may never come. The column halts briefly at a crossroads to reorganize. Maps are spread across engine decks, corners weighted down with helmets. Officers argue in low voices. Routes are debated not by distance or enemy presence, but by probability. Which road might still have fuel? Which village might not yet be stripped bare? Which American unit might still be retreating instead of destroying everything behind them?
These are not questions armies should be asking in the middle of an offensive. Weiss traces a finger west again, but the line feels abstract now. The Meuse might as well be on another continent. Between here and there lies not just the enemy, but arithmetic. Consumption versus distance. Chance versus certainty. As the first pale light of morning filters through the trees, Weiss climbs back into his vehicle. The engine starts, but the sound is different this time. Still strong, but strained. Like a runner forcing another sprint on tired legs. The order comes to advance again. They will keep moving while they can, because stopping, really stopping, means the end of momentum. And once momentum dies, fuel alone cannot bring it back. The column rolls forward into the gray morning, machines and men bound together by a shared dependency they no longer pretend is temporary. Weiss watches the road, jaw tight, mind calculating. Not how far they can go, but how much longer they can pretend they're still advancing. Somewhere ahead, the truth is waiting. Patient, inevitable, and running on empty.
Morning reveals what darkness had concealed. The road is littered with machines that never made it. Half-tracks frozen at odd angles, trucks with their hoods up, engines gutted, crews gone. Tanks parked neatly along the verge like monuments to a plan that ran out of time. Hauptmann Karl Weiss passes them in silence. No one speaks now, not because there's nothing to say, but because saying it would make it real. The fuel gauge needle trembles just above empty. Every incline feels steeper. Every gear change feels like a negotiation. Weiss orders speed reduced, not for caution, but for economy. Engines are coaxed rather than commanded. The offensive has narrowed to a thin spear, and even that spear is hollowing out from behind. A message arrives from Corps headquarters. Brief, uncomfortably calm. Advance as far as possible. Secure fuel if encountered. Hold position if movement becomes impossible. Hold position. Weiss reads the words twice, holds the paper longer than necessary. Holding position was never part of the dream. This operation was built on motion, on bypassing, overrunning, confusing. A stationary German force in the Ardennes is not an attacking army. It's a target. He folds the message and tucks it into his map case, already knowing it may never matter. Ahead, the road drops into a shallow valley. A river cuts across their path, narrow but deep, banks iced over. The bridge is intact. For a moment, relief flickers. Then Weiss sees the American engineers. They're already working. Charges set, wires running, a desperate race measured in seconds and meters. The Germans open fire. Rifles crack, a machine gun rattles. One American falls, tumbling sideways into the snow. The bridge explodes anyway. Steel and timber leap upward, then collapse into the river below. Water flashes white, then black. The crossing is gone. The column stops. Engines idle. Drink. Weiss closes his eyes briefly, not in despair, in calculation. A detour might exist, if they have the fuel. A crossing might be improvised, if they have the time. Air support could suppress defenders, if the Luftwaffe still owned the sky. They have none of these. Engineers move forward, studying the wreckage. Heads shake. Tools stay in packs. The decision comes quickly, because there is no alternative. They will wait. The word spreads down the column like a chill. Crews dismount.
Engines are shut off, finally. The sudden quiet is almost shocking. Without the rumble of motors, the forest seems closer, watching. Men light cigarettes, huddling against their vehicles. Others dig shallow positions, rifles resting on tank hulls that will not move again today, or tomorrow. Weiss stands on the bridge approach, staring at the broken span. He imagines fuel magically appearing behind him, trucks cresting the hill, engines humming, hoses ready. Nothing comes. Hours pass. By midday, American artillery begins to probe. Not a barrage, just reminders. Single shells walking the road, testing reactions. The Germans respond cautiously, conserving ammunition the same way they conserve fuel. A runner arrives from the rear with bad news delivered quietly. No fuel is coming. The words are not shouted. They don't need to be. Everyone already feels them. The captured gasoline that carried them this far is gone. Burned, spilled, consumed kilometer by kilometer. The miracle has evaporated into heat and motion and noise. Weiss returns to his vehicle and sits heavily in the seat. He rests his helmet on the dashboard and stares at it as if it might offer advice. This is the moment, he realizes. Not the firefight, not the explosion. This. The instant when movement becomes impossible and the future collapses into a single, narrow choice. Stay and fight on foot, or withdraw, if withdrawal is even possible. He thinks of the American supply lines again, of roads stretching west and south, clogged with trucks that will detour around this broken bridge without much thought, of depots that will refill overnight, of engines that will roar back to life tomorrow with no memory of today's shortage. Then he thinks of his own column, of tanks that are now pillboxes, of crews who will soon be infantry, of an offensive that depended on speed, now pinned in place by an absence measured in liters. The radio crackles to life with new orders. Defensive positions. Prepare for counterattack. The transformation is complete. Weiss steps out of the vehicle and looks back along the road they came from. The distance feels greater now than it did yesterday, not measured in kilometers, but in reality. The Ardennes is no longer a corridor of opportunity. It is a trap slowly closing. As American artillery grows bolder and aircraft begin to appear in the clearing skies above, Weiss tightens his gloves and signals his men. They will fight, but they will not advance again. The miracle is over.
The first American aircraft appears just after noon. A silver flash against clearing skies, then another and another. The engines sound different from anything on the ground, smooth, confident, unhurried. Weiss watches them circle high above the valley, banking lazily as if inspecting property they already own. The men hear it too. Heads tilt upward, cigarettes go forgotten between fingers. Someone mutters a curse, another man laughs once, short and hollow. The weather has turned. What snow and cloud had hidden, sunlight now reveals. The first strafing run comes without warning. Machine guns chatter, ripping into the road behind the column. A truck erupts in flame, fuel igniting instantly, the fire climbing higher than the trees. Men scatter, diving for ditches, hugging the frozen ground. The irony is bitter. Fuel, what they came for, what carried them here, now burns uselessly into the sky. The aircraft pulls up and vanishes eastward. Silence follows, broken only by the crackle of fire and the distant boom of artillery adjusting its aim. This is no longer an advance, it's a siege.
Weiss moves along the line, checking positions, speaking quietly to tank commanders whose machines will never move again. Guns are traversed to cover likely approaches. Infantry digs deeper, rifles poking from shallow earthworks scraped out of frozen soil. Everyone understands now. The war has changed shape. Radio messages from neighboring units confirm it. Some are attempting to pull back, abandoning vehicles wholesale. Others are already encircled, fighting to hold small pockets of ground with dwindling ammunition and no hope of resupply. The Americans are coming, not in a rush, but in layers. Infantry probing, artillery adjusting, aircraft hunting anything that moves. And behind them, an endless logistical machine grinding forward without hesitation. Weiss pauses beside one of his tanks. The crew sits on the hull, helmets off, faces pale and streaked with grime. The driver stares at the road ahead as if sheer will might restart the engine. "It's empty," he says quietly, tapping the fuel gauge. Weiss nods. "I know." There is nothing else to say. By late afternoon, the American artillery finds its rhythm. Shells fall closer now. One lands among a cluster of abandoned vehicles farther down the road, detonating stored ammunition. The explosion rolls through the valley like a wave, followed by black smoke and debris. Weiss ducks instinctively, then straightens. His movements feel slower now, heavier, not from fear, but from understanding. This is the moment officers remember for the rest of their lives. Not when they were shot at, not when men fell, but when they realized the battle was already decided. The decision to attack through the Ardennes had been bold, brilliant even, but boldness cannot manufacture fuel. Courage cannot refill tanks. Skill cannot move steel without gasoline. The Americans had bent, and then they had stopped bending. As dusk approaches, orders finally arrive. Prepare to withdraw east under cover of darkness. Destroy what cannot be moved. Weiss reads the message twice, then once more for good measure. The words feel unreal, like they belong to another unit, another war. Withdraw. The command passes quietly down the line. Crews begin preparing demolition charges. Tank guns are disabled, radios smashed, maps burned. Anything useful to the enemy is rendered useless. One by one, the engines are silenced forever. The sound is final, a metallic click, a last hiss of heat, then nothing. Weiss stands beside his command vehicle as a charge is placed inside. He rests a hand on the cold metal, feeling the faint warmth still trapped beneath the armor. It carried him farther than he had any right to expect. He steps back. The explosion is sharp, violent, brief. When the smoke clears, the vehicle is a twisted shell. Another miracle spent. As dusk approaches, the men begin to move on foot, slipping back into the forest in small groups. No lights, no engines, just boots crunching softly in snow, breath steaming in the cold. Weiss takes one last look west. Somewhere out there, American trucks are already rolling forward, headlights blazing, fuel tanks full, roads reopening, gaps closing, the Bulge shrinking. He turns east and follows his men into the trees. The offensive is over, not because it was beaten in battle, but because it ran out of what made battle possible: fuel. And with it, the illusion that luck could replace logistics.
The forest swallows them whole. Without engines, without headlights, the Ardennes becomes something ancient and indifferent again. Trees close ranks, snow muffles sound. The war shrinks to the rhythm of boots and breathing, to the creak of leather and the distant thud of artillery that no longer belongs to them. Hauptmann Karl Weiss walks at the center of the column now, no longer leading from a vehicle, no longer separated by steel and machinery. He feels the weight of his pack with every step. Each item suddenly matters. Each ounce must justify itself. They pass abandoned armor in the dark, familiar silhouettes reduced to shadows, Panthers, Panzer IVs, half-tracks, all empty, all silent.
Some still smoke faintly, the last warmth of captured fuel drifting uselessly into the night air. No one looks at them for long. It hurts too much. By dawn, they reach higher ground. From a ridge, Weiss pauses and looks back west. The sky glows faintly, lit by fires and flares. The Americans are moving again, roads reopening, momentum restored. The Bulge is already collapsing. Men sit heavily where they can, backs against trees, rifles laid across their knees. Faces are hollow, eyes red from smoke and sleeplessness. No one speaks of victory anymore. Survival has replaced ambition. Weiss distributes what remains: ammunition, rations, water, parsing it out with care. There is no bitterness in his voice, no anger, only precision. The war has stripped itself down to essentials. Later, they encounter another German unit, stragglers from a different Kampfgruppe. Their story is the same: fuel captured, fuel spent, advance halted, withdrawal under fire. Different roads, same ending. An officer from the other unit recognizes Weiss and gives a thin smile. "So," he says, gesturing vaguely west, "did you reach the Meuse?" Weiss shakes his head. The officer nods, as if that answers everything. As they move on, Weiss's thoughts drift, not to strategy, but to moments. The smell of American gasoline, the sound of engines roaring back to life, the brief and intoxicating belief that speed could outrun reality. Those moments feel distant now, like a dream recalled in pieces, already fading. By the second night, they reach German lines, proper lines, trenches, wire, familiar voices. The men sink down with relief that borders on exhaustion. Medical orderlies move among them. Questions are asked, reports taken. Weiss gives his simply: advanced until fuel exhaustion, enemy resistance increased, withdrawal executed. It sounds clinical, clean. It hides the truth that an entire offensive lived and died on borrowed gasoline. In the days that follow, news filters in, American counterattacks expanding, German units encircled and destroyed, others barely escaping. The weather clears completely now, sealing the outcome. Weiss listens without comment. He knows. The Ardennes offensive will be remembered for its surprise, its brutality, its winter cold, for desperate fighting in forests and frozen villages. But for those who lived it from the inside, who rode the spearhead west, it will always be remembered differently. As a war measured in liters, as a miracle that burned brightly, briefly, and then went out. Weiss cleans his pistol that night, hands steady, movements automatic. Outside, engines rumble, supply vehicles arriving, too late to matter. Fuel drums are unloaded, stacked neatly in rows. Real fuel, plenty of it. He watches from the edge of the light, expression unreadable. The war will go on. Orders will come, positions will be held or lost, men will fight and die for ground measured in meters. But something fundamental has shifted. He has seen the truth behind the curtain. That modern war is not won by courage alone, or even by skill, but by logistics so vast they feel invisible until they fail. The miracle did not fail because the men were weak. It failed because miracles are not renewable. Weiss lies back against the frozen earth and closes his eyes for the first time in days. Sleep comes quickly, and with it the knowledge that the war's outcome was never decided in the forests of the Ardennes, but in the supply lines that stretched far beyond them.
Weeks later, the snow begins to melt. Not all at once, just enough to turn the Ardennes roads into rivers of mud, to expose the blackened scars where tanks once stood and burned. The forests are quieter now. The fighting has moved on, eastward, always eastward. Hauptmann Karl Weiss walks a supply road behind the lines, boots sinking slightly with each step. American artillery is a distant echo now, like a storm retreating over the horizon. The immediacy of survival has faded, replaced by something heavier. Reflection. Along the road, German trucks crawl forward in neat, disciplined lines. Fuel drums are stacked high, secured with care. Mechanics wave vehicles through checkpoints with practiced motions. Everything works. Finally. Too late. Weiss stops beside a row of fuel barrels and rests a gloved hand on one. Cold steel. Solid. Reliable. The kind of reliability they needed weeks ago, when speed mattered, when distance still felt conquerable. He thinks back to that morning near Ligneville, the smell of American gasoline, the laughter, the belief that fate had tilted in their favor. It hadn't. The Ardennes offensive had not failed because the soldiers lacked resolve. It failed because resolve cannot substitute for supply, because every kilometer advanced multiplied the cost of sustaining it, because the enemy's strength did not end at the front line, it began behind it. American supply mines had bent under the surprise, then snapped back into place with brutal efficiency. Roads repaired, bridges rebuilt, dumps replenished. Fuel flowed like water. The German advance, by contrast, had lived hand to mouth, each success consuming the very thing it required to continue. Stolen fuel. Burned fuel. Gone. Weiss watches a convoy pass and understands, fully now, what he only sensed in fragments before. The turning point of the battle was not Bastogne. It was not a frozen firefight in a forest clearing. It was not even the weather. It was the moment the fuel ran out again and did not return. That was when the war revealed itself. Modern war is arithmetic. Consumption versus capacity. Industry versus opportunity. Logistics versus hope. The men at the front can only spend what the rear provides. Weiss steps back from the road and lets the convoy disappear into the trees. He knows the future now, not in detail, but in direction. There will be more fighting, more orders, more losses, but no more miracles. The Ardennes had offered one last illusion that speed and surprise could rewrite the balance of an industrial war. It couldn't. The realization settles in quietly, without drama. The war was already decided the moment they turned west on borrowed gasoline. Everything after that was just motion without fuel. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to let us know. A simple like helps this history reach people who may never have heard it. It tells the algorithm that these moments still matter. Subscribe if you want to stay with us. Here we uncover the moments in the Second World War when everything changed, when there was no return. These are not just battles. They are human realizations, sacrifices, and truths buried beneath decades of noise. If you feel comfortable, leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or somewhere else entirely. Tell us if someone in your family lived through this war. You're not just watching a video, you're helping keep these memories alive. Because once the stories disappear, there really is no return. Thank you for watching.